filthy black kid from the slums like you doesn't belong in school. You belong in the gutter." Those exact words would live inside Officer Robert Phillips forever, and every single night when the house became quiet and the television was turned off, those words would return to sit heavily on his chest like a soaked blanket. He would try to push them away, but they always came back louder and clearer, and he would see the boy's face again, those big, quiet eyes that refused to cry even when everything inside wanted to, and he would feel something deep inside him move, something that felt very much like shame and regret. It was early November, the kind of morning where the cold doesn't just brush against your skin, but climbs inside your jacket and stays there, refusing to leave. The sky wasn't pouring rain, it was only crying very softly, with a thin grey mist that covered every metal gate and every concrete step, making them look shiny and sad, and the air carried the smell of wet leaves mixed with the faint diesel smoke from the buses passing on the main road. 11-year-old Amir Khan walked slowly toward the Lincoln Middle School gate, wearing old white shoes his mother had bought 2 years earlier now. The soles were so thin that he could feel every small stone pressing through them, and each step made a soft, wet, squishing sound. He held a faded blue plastic bag tightly against his chest, and inside it was everything that truly mattered to him: one neatly ironed school uniform, a mathematics book with pages already curling at the edges, and one small precious photograph, the only picture remaining of his mother, holding him as a baby, her smile so wide that her eyes almost disappeared, and Amir used to press his nose against that photo, sometimes trying to find her scent again, though the smell had long faded, leaving only paper and time. Behind Amir was very dark-skinned, the kind of black that caused some people to look twice and then quickly look away. His hair was short, tight curls, and his school bag was second-hand, with a strap that kept slipping off his thin shoulder. He walked with his head slightly lowered, not out of fear, but because he had learned early that looking straight into certain eyes made people uncomfortable, and when people became uncomfortable, they sometimes turned mean. And today, he didn't want mean. Today was important because there was a big math test, the kind that decided which group you would be placed in next term, and Amir had studied every evening under the single bulb in his grandmother's tiny room, determined to make her proud. She worked 12 long hours every day cleaning other people's houses, her hands rough like tree bark. Yet when she touched his head, she was always so gentle, and last night before he fell asleep, she had whispered, "Tomorrow you will do well, Beta, I know it in my heart." So Amir walked a little faster, wanting to reach the classroom early, sit in the front row, and show Mrs. Davis that he was serious about learning. But Officer Robert Phillips was standing at the gate that morning because of the new security rules, requiring every child to be checked and every bag to be opened. Phillips was tall, and his uniform was very crisp, his boots shining even in the dull grey light, and when he saw Amir approaching, his eyes first went to the wet, worn shoes, then to the cheap plastic bag, and finally to the dark skin, and his mouth tightened into a straight, hard line. He stepped directly into the middle of the path and said, "Stop right there, kid." Amir stopped so suddenly that water splashed up from his shoes, and his heart began beating very fast, like a small bird trapped inside his ribs. "Open the bag," Phillips ordered in a flat voice that already sounded as though he had decided everything before Amir even spoke. Amir lifted the bag slowly and said, "Sir, it's just my uniform and my books. There's a math test today. I need to go inside." But Phillips didn't let the sentence finish. "Don't lie to me, kids. Like, you always have some story," he snatched the bag, turned it upside down, and everything spilled onto the wet concrete with a soft, sad sound. The uniform landed in a puddle. The mathematics book opened itself, and began drinking dirty water, and the small photo flew out, hit the ground, cracked across the mother's face, and slid into a filthy puddle near the drain. Amir dropped to his knees at once, his hands reaching desperately for the picture. "Please," he whispered. "That's my mum," but Phillips kicked the photo with the toe of his boot, sending it spinning farther away until it landed face down in black water, and Amir froze, staring at the place where his mother's smile used to be, now just wet, ruined paper and mud. Phillips grabbed both of Amir's thin wrists, twisted them behind his back, and said, "You think you can just walk in here looking like that, making everybody feel sorry for you?" Amir tried to speak. I'm just going to class," but Phillips was no longer listening. "Filthy black kid from the slums like you doesn't belong in school. You belong in the gutter." The words landed like repeated slaps, going deep inside Amir's chest, where they would stay for a very long time. Phillips pulled out thick black zip ties, not proper handcuffs, just cheap plastic ones, and pulled them tight, so tight that Amir felt skin break, and sharp pain raced up both arms, but he made no sound, because he had learned long ago that making a sound sometimes made things worse. Phillips pushed him hard against the cold brick wall, scraping Amir's cheek until a thin line of blood appeared, and two more officers arrived, quickly standing in a half circle with phones already out, and one of them laughed low. "Look at this little rat. Thought he could sneak in," while the other one simply shook his head and kept filming. But Amir didn't look at them. He kept his eyes fixed on the puddle on the ruined photo, and he felt something inside him crack quietly, not loud, not dramatic, just a soft breaking, like stepping on a dry leaf that turns to powder under your foot. 20 minutes later, they took him inside to the assistant principal's office, a small room that always smelled of old coffee and warm photocopy paper. They sat him on a hard plastic chair with wrists still tied and blood from his cheek slowly dripping onto his shirt, making small dark spots. Phillips sat at the desk, writing the report. "Suspicious child attempting unauthorized entry. Resisted verbal commands. Minimal force used to gain compliance," and he wrote it calmly, as if he were describing the whether the assistant principal, Mrs. Gomez, came in, looked briefly at the boy, looked at the report, and signed it without reading the second page, because she had a meeting in 10 minutes, and she didn't ask Amir anything. Not, "Are you hurt?" Not, "What's your name?" Not, "Why are you bleeding?" So Amir sat there alone, with the clock ticking tick tick tick, while outside the hallway was full of life. Children laughing, lockers banging, someone dropping a book, someone shouting a friend's name, and the intercom crackling reminder, "All students, please report to homeroom. Today is picture retake day." But Amir just stared at his shoes, where water was still dripping, making a small puddle under the chair, and he thought about his grandmother waiting at home, hoping he would return, smiling and telling her the test went well, and he thought about his mother, how she used to sing to him when he was scared, and he tried to remember the song, but only the tune came soft and fading. At 10:30 the door opened again, and a woman stepped inside, wearing a simple black coat and a long maroon dupatta, her hair tied back, neatly carrying a thin file, and her steps were calm, but when her eyes found Amir, everything about her stopped. She stood still for 2 seconds, and then her face changed. Not anger, but something deeper, something that looked like heartbreak mixed with fire. She walked straight to him, knelt down, took his face very gently between her hands, and when she saw the zip ties, when she saw the blood on his cheek, when she saw his wrists swollen and purple, her breathing became short and sharp. "Amir," she whispered. "Beta." It's Mimia's eyes opened wide. Auntie Ayesha, Professor Ayesha Ahmed, his mother's younger sister, a well-known social worker and university teacher who spent her life fighting in courts for children nobody else would fight for. She had been trying to get custody of Amir since the day his mother died, and this very morning, at 9:15, the Family court judge had finally signed the emergency custody order. She had driven straight from the courthouse, with papers still warm in her bag, planning to surprise him, take him home, make him breakfast, and tell him he never had to feel alone again. But instead, she found him, like this tide, bleeding small, and she stood up, very slowly, turned to Officer Phillips, and said, "Untie my nephew, right now." Phillips gave a short laugh. "Your nephew? Funny how nobody told us that earlier." Aisha didn't raise her voice because she didn't need to. She opened her file, took out one single sheet still warm from the court printer. Emergency custody order signed, stamped, file numbered, and she placed it on the desk, read it. Mrs. Gomez read the paper. Her face lost color, and she said, "Officer, release him immediately." Phillips looked at Aisha, then at the paper, then at Amir, and finally he pulled a small knife from his belt, cut the zip ties, and the plastic fell away. Amir's wrists were dark red skin, broken in places, blood in thin lines. Aisha took both his hands, held them softly, and blew on the cuts the way she used to when he was 5 and fell from his bicycle. She didn't speak. She just held his hands like they were the most important thing in the world. Then she looked up at Phillips and said, "I want every single piece of footage preserved right now. Gate camera, hallway camera, body cam, every angle, every second. Filing formal complaints with internal affairs, with the school district, with the state education department, with the child welfare board, with the Human Rights Commission, and with the press. And Officer Phillips, this is not going to end with you going home tonight like nothing happened." She turned to Amir Chalobeta. "Let's go home." Amir stood up slowly, his legs weak, and he looked toward the window, toward the puddle outside where his mother's photos still lay. Aisha followed his eyes, walked outside, knelt in the wet grass, picked up the broken picture, wiped the mud and water from the glass with her dupatta, very carefully, like she was touching something holy, came back and placed it in Amir's hands. A. B. Main, Terry Soth, Hoon Beta, Hamisha, Kalai. They walked out together, Amir holding the photo to his chest, Aisha holding his other hand, and behind them the office became very loud. Mrs. Gomez on the phone, voice shaking, calling the superintendent, calling security, calling anyone who would listen. By lunchtime, the whole school knew. Teachers whispered in staff rooms. Students showed each other short clips on their phones, and by evening, the full body cam and gate camera video was on social media. People watched, people cried, people got angry. People shared, people wrote long posts, people asked questions. Why a child? Why like this? Why nobody stopped it 3 months? Later, Officer Robert Phillips was charged with assault under authority, false imprisonment of a minor, filing false official report, child endangerment, and 6 months after that he stood in court, head down, listening to the judge receive 3 years in prison, law enforcement certification permanently revoked, lifetime ban from any job involving children. His badge was gone, his pension was gone, his name was gone from every honor list, and every time someone said Officer Phillips, they didn't say hero anymore. They said something else a bit. The real change was quieter and bigger. Professor Aisha Ahmed didn't stop at saving her nephew. She used every bit of attention the video brought. She met with lawmakers, she spoke in meetings, she wrote articles, she sat with parents, she cried with families, and in the end, a new law was born, the Amir Khan Protection of Vulnerable Students Act, which said no child can be restrained in school without immediate guardian notification. Every use of force on a student must be reviewed by an independent board within 48 hours. Every school officer must complete mandatory training on trauma-informed response, racial bias, and poverty awareness. All body camera and gate footage must automatically upload to a secure third-party server so no officer can delete or claim malfunction, and schools must report every incident involving poor or minority students to the state child welfare board. Amir started going to school in a new uniform, clean white shoes that didn't leak his wrists, healed the marks faded, but he never forgot how they felt. He started smiling again first. Small and careful, then bigger and real, he made friends. He raised his hand in class. He started helping other quiet kids, the ones who kept their heads down, and he told them, "It's okay, you belong here." Some nights he still heard those words in his sleep. Filthy black kid from the slums like you doesn't belong in school. You belong in the gutter. But now, when they came, he answered back inside his head, "I belong wherever I choose to stand, and today I choose the front row of the classroom today. I choose the kitchen table where my grandmother makes tea today. I choose the sofa where my auntie reads me stories today. I choose a life that sometimes hurts but never feels hopeless." Grandmoth and auntie both lived together. Now they made space. In the small house they cook together, they laugh together, they pray together. Sometimes Amir sits between them, holding his mother's photo, and he feels her smile. Again, not just on paper, but inside his chest, warm, steady relief. This story reached somewhere deep inside. You share it tonight with someone who still feels like they don't belong. Like it if you believe no child should ever be told they are less because of their skin, because of their shoes, because of their bags. Subscribe if you want more stories that remind us hearts are stronger than hate. Turn on notifications, because someone out there right now is waiting to hear you belong right here, right now, exactly as you are ill. See you in the next story. Keep your heart safe and keep walking.